Welcome back, everybody. So today, as we said, marks 17 years since the September 11th attacks. Among the some 3,000 victims, hundreds of firefighters and officers. One New York City firefighter who lost many friends that day is now honoring them in a special way, thanks to a chance encounter. Watch this story.
A plane has just crashed into the World Trade Center.
When the Twin Towers erupted in flames, thousands of first responders rushed in to help, including fireman Tim Sullivan.
I gotta go help. I gotta go do my job. As fast as I was driving to get into the firehouse, I was actually being passed on the left and the right by other firemen and cops trying to get to the city also.
When Sullivan finally reached ground zero, he sprung into action.
And we just slowly started organizing into groups as they tried to pretty much reorganize the fire department to try and do what we could to help.
3 years after the attacks, Sullivan was transferred to a new firehouse, Rescue 1. One night in December of 2006, Sullivan was on duty when he heard a knock on the firehouse door.
I answered the door and there was two guys. They're like, "Hi, how you doing? My name's Travis. I'm a Marine. I was wondering if we could, we want to come, we're in the city visiting." I say, "Well, my name's Tim. I'm a former Marine." And we kind of hit it off a little bit, just having that common bond.
At the end of their visit, Sullivan gave Manion a Rescue 1 hat and said goodbye to Manion.
He went home the next day to Doylestown, told his father about the visit he had had with Rescue 1, and said, "Hold on to this until I get back."
But Manion never made it home. He was killed in April of 2007 while leading a patrol in Ramadi, Iraq.
A couple of his Marines were wounded out in the middle of an intersection, and Travis went out to protect them. And he was shot by a sniper.
Sullivan didn't learn about Manion's death until 2015, when he read the book Brothers Forever, written by Manion's father, Colonel Tom Manion. In it was a story about Manion's visit to that firehouse.
And all of a sudden, I was like, I remember that night. I was working.
Sullivan reached out to Manion's family and learned they had started a foundation in their son's honor called the Travis Manion Foundation. Their marquee event is a 5K 9/11 Heroes Run, which honors first responders of the 9/11 terrorist attacks, like Tim Sullivan.
I'm very proud to have met him. I am proud to know that I had just a small little impact, and to know that I was a part of that makes me proud.
Lieutenant Tim Sullivan is currently with FDNY's Squad Company 270 in Queens. Thank you for your service, and good morning, Lieutenant. Great to have you here.
Thank you.
So can we go back to this day 17 years ago? Because you got in your car and started driving down to the Twin Towers, and you don't like to be called a first responder. Why?
I'm a firefighter, and I was not a first responder. I got down there after the towers had collapsed. The first responders were the guys that went in. They're the ones that climbed the stairs that day. And there were guys that I knew, guys that I didn't know, but they were there first. I came there after, and I was just trying to help out afterwards. I wasn't one of the first ones there, and I don't like to be lumped in with them.
You were in danger. You knew that danger awaited. And on your way down there, is it true that you called your wife, who was 8.5 months pregnant, and then you called your friend Jeff, and what did you say to him?
Well, what had happened was I'd gotten a phone call at home from my brother. He said, "Are you watching TV?" I said, "No, I'm not." He goes, "Turn on the TV." The first tower had been hit and was burning. I said, "Oh, it looks like the brothers are going to be busy today." And he said, "Tim, it's going to get worse. You need to get to work." So I jumped in my car. I started heading in, and I left a message for my wife. She's a school teacher. She was 8.5 months pregnant. I said, "Hey, something's going on in Manhattan. I got to get to work, and I don't know when I'll get to call you later." When I got to Yonkers Raceway, I could actually see the two towers burning. And I just got this feeling, and I said, "Man, it's going to be bad." And I called my friend Jeff, who we had already asked to be my son's unborn child's godfather. And I said, "Jeff, firemen are going to die today. If something happens, you're going to have to watch over Colleen and the kid."
Wow. firemen did die that day. And thank God you were not one of them. And all these years later, after that moment, 5 years later, you're in your firehouse. Rescue 1 at that point?
Yep.
Where they lost 13...
They lost 11 guys that day.
11 firefighters. And Travis Manion comes by.
Yes.
With his buddy, right?
Yep.
You're a former Marine. He's in the Armed Services. He's a Marine. Wants to just get a tour of the firehouse and understand what you guys do, what you did, what it was all about, as he's about to go off to his second deployment in Iraq. And that's where we're going to pick it up after the break, not only with the lieutenant, but with Travis's sister, Ryan. In 2007, First Lieutenant Travis Manion was serving his second tour of duty in Iraq. He was on a mission when his troop was ambushed, and Travis died trying to save his fellow Marines. His sister, Ryan Manion, and his family formed the Travis Manion Foundation in his memory. She's here now, along with FDNY Lieutenant Tim Sullivan, who met Travis by chance one night many years ago. Ryan, welcome to you. So Tim and you, I mean, you're Tim, he comes in, the Travis, and you and he bond. You give him the hat, all this time passes, and then years later, you just happen to be reading this book.
Yes.
And the name of the book is?
Brothers Forever.
Which is about?
It's about Travis and Brandon Looney. They were roommates at the Naval Academy. Travis obviously became a United States Marine, and Brandon Looney became a Navy SEAL. Brandon Looney was killed as a SEAL over in Afghanistan. And the two of them are now buried next to each other at Arlington National Cemetery.
And you, in reading this, have this incredible aha moment when you see your meeting with Travis described in the book by Travis's dad, by your dad. So why was that included? Was that an important moment for him?
It was a really important moment. It was actually one of the reasons we started the 9/11 Heroes Run at the foundation. You know, my dad continued to talk about this idea that Travis came back and you know, for Tim, it was just another individual showing up and wanting to say thanks. And
you didn't even remember him in particular.
But to my brother, he was extremely affected. And it was the purpose of him coming to New York. It was to go up and thank the men and women who had served and protected on September 11th. So he came back and he brought that hat back that Tim had gave to him. And he said, you know, Dad, wear this while I'm gone and remember that this is what we're fighting for.
You said today, on this day of all, you're going to be thinking about the following words: if not me, then who?
Yes.
That's from Travis.
It is.
Can you tell us how he said that? What happened?
So before Travis left for a second deployment to Iraq, my husband questioned why he had to go back and made a joking comment to him. And my brother got serious and he said, you know, if I don't go back to Iraq, then somebody much less prepared is going to go in my place. If not me, then who? And so we took those 5 words and we turned them into a movement. And really what we are trying to do at the Travis Manion Foundation is to make sure that everybody takes those 5 words and tries to apply them into their daily lives every single day.
It's a reminder. I mean, the run is not only to honor the first responders, second responders, however you want to refer to yourselves, but it's not only to honor them and help them, but in a way it's a reminder of kind of what we were talking about at the top, which is that moment of unity we had after 9/11, and how what binds us is so much stronger than what divides us. I mean, you tell me, Tim, what you see as the meaning of that message and what you want people to be remembering on a day like this.
Well, if not me, then who resonates, I think, within each individual person. It's at that moment of challenge, are you going to rise to the occasion? Are you going to stand up for what's right? Are you going to stand up and do the right thing, even if nobody's looking? I think it goes to the whole character of an individual and the character of this country. On September 11th, 343 firemen gave their lives. 23 New York City police officers gave their lives. The Port Authority Police Department, and also all the members in the towers, the civilians that we were trying to help and that tried to help each other. They all had their if not me, then who moment. And I think each individual needs to sit there and say, if not me, then who, at a particular moment in their life. And I think it goes to what's inside as your individual character when nobody's looking.
Travis didn't just say it, he lived it right into the very end, because when he was killed, he was protecting others and saved lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Travis spoke those 5 words right before leaving, but when you look at the life that Travis lived, he lived by them each and every day. And that's why what we're trying to do, you spoke to it at the Travis Manion Foundation, it's taking those 5 words and using them to build upon strengthening our national character, taking us back to that time 17 years ago, where I think every one of us who was alive at that time, we felt it. We felt the sense of unity as a country. And how can we get back to that place? And that's really a lot of the work that we do at the Travis Manion Foundation is all about that. So these 9/11 Heroes Runs, we're galvanizing close to 60,000 people in the month of September with, their Heroes Runs, their 5K runs, but they are so much more than that. These are community events, making sure that each and every community across America does not forget the service and sacrifice of the men and women who protect us.
Absolutely right. Well said. And if we don't take the time on a day like this to remember and honor them, then who will? It's too easy to go about your day without giving it even a thought all these years later, which may in some way be a sign of healing. But the respect is owed, and we certainly appreciate what you guys have done to honor the fallen.